Ladies and gentlemen, here's an impactful, spiritually aligned introduction for your motivational speech in the calm, powerful style of Shi Heng Yi. There is a stillness in the air before something sacred unfolds. And in that silence, a whisper travels not through sound, but through spirit. You didn't find this message by chance. You were led here because something in you is awakening, something ancient, something divine. July 20th, this is not just a date on a calendar. It is a divine marking, a moment chosen long before your struggles began, a date that God Himself has written in the unseen, the day of your comeback. For a long time, you felt overlooked, underestimated, forgotten. But what you may not realize is that your setbacks were never punishments, they were preparation. You weren't being buried, you were being planted. And now, heaven is calling for the seed to rise. God does not operate on our timeline. He waits until the conditions are right, not for the world, but for you. The pain, the silence, the waiting, it all had purpose. And that purpose is about to be revealed. This is not about motivation. This is about alignment. This is about remembering the truth of who you are, not what life made you, but who God designed you to be. And on July 20th, that truth steps forward. Prepare yourself. Let go of what you thought was lost, because what is coming is not a restart. It is a return to your power, a return to your calling, a return to the divine rhythm set by the Creator Himself. Listen deeply. The shift has already begun. There are moments in life that seem ordinary on the surface, yet carry a spiritual weight far beyond human comprehension. July 20th is one of those moments. It may look like just another day in the calendar to many, but for you, it has been marked in the unseen. Long before you faced disappointment, long before the trials began to mount, God had already placed a marker on this day. It was not chosen randomly. It is not a coincidence. It is divine timing, selected with precision, designed for your alignment and destined for your comeback. In the realm of the Spirit, time does not flow as it does here. God is not bound by clocks or calendars. He moves in seasons, in signals, and in signs. While people around you might overlook the signs, those who are sensitive to the Spirit understand that certain dates carry divine vibration. July 20th is vibrating with such purpose. It is the culmination of a hidden season, a period of pruning and spiritual quietness, where things were stripped not to destroy you, but to reveal the real you. The version of you that was hidden beneath the noise, buried under the expectations of others, overshadowed by failure, regret, or shame. God marked this date not because everything will suddenly become easy, but because the work He has been doing in you has reached a divine threshold. The idea of a marked date is deeply rooted in spiritual tradition. Throughout Scripture, God marked days for breakthroughs, for deliverance, for calling people out of exile, for pouring out power. In your life, you have seen things delayed, doors shut, relationships collapse, and hope flicker. But all along, there has been a sacred pattern unfolding, a rhythm orchestrated by heaven itself. July 20th carries that rhythm. It is a point of convergence where spiritual timing and personal readiness meet. It does not mean you will be perfect by then, but it means you will be prepared, not by your own strength, but by the quiet and patient hand of God that has been shaping you in the background. There are events that change the trajectory of a life, but before those events manifest in the physical, they are birthed in the spiritual. July 20th has already been written in that higher realm. The comeback God has planned for you is not spontaneous. It has been forming in the silence, in your prayers, in your tears, in the times you wanted to give up but didn't. God doesn't just restore randomly. He restores when the soul is aligned with the moment. That alignment is reaching fullness. You may not feel ready. You may still be battling fear, uncertainty, or fatigue, but heaven is not waiting on your feelings. It's responding to your preparation. Every unseen act of obedience, every small step you took in faith, every moment you chose hope over bitterness, it has all been recorded. People may not understand why this specific date matters. They may mock the idea that a single day can change anything. But what they do not see is the spiritual architecture behind it. July 20th is not magic, it is not superstition, it is divine orchestration. It is God saying, I have appointed a time. And when God appoints a time, no delay, no failure, no person, and no demon in hell can stop what he has already begun. This is not a prediction, it is a confirmation. Something within you already senses it. That whisper, that deep knowing that something is shifting, that the long night is turning, that what was dormant is about to rise. You don't need to force it, you only need to be aware. Because when God marks a date, it is never about the date itself. It's about who you are becoming when you step into it. The human mind often views struggle as punishment, as something to be escaped or avoided. But the divine perspective sees struggle differently. It is not the enemy, it is a sacred instrument used to shape, refine, and prepare. The pain you've endured, the nights of uncertainty, the seasons where everything felt like it was falling apart, these were not signs of God's abandonment. They were signs of His craftsmanship. You were not being left behind. You were being prepared for something greater than you could have imagined. And that preparation doesn't come without pressure. Every calling comes with weight. And before God can place that weight on you, He has to build within you the strength to carry it. Just as a potter shapes clay with tension, water, and fire, your life has been molded through difficulty. What looked like chaos was actually construction. What felt like loss was spiritual alignment. There are things inside of you, gifts, wisdom, authority, discernment, that could only surface under pressure. Without the struggle, you would have never known the depths of your endurance. Without the setbacks, you wouldn't have learned how to rise when no one was clapping for you. These moments were not wasted. They were intentional. You were being stripped of the false so the real could emerge. Struggles expose what's temporary and reveal what's eternal. They peel away the layers of people, pleasing, self, doubt, and fear that have silently shaped your choices. When everything is stripped and you're left standing with nothing but your breath and your belief, that is where identity is forged. In that furnace, a version of you was being birthed, one that is grounded, one that knows its worth not from applause, but from alignment with the divine. Every spiritual comeback has a breaking point, the moment when everything seems too much, when giving up seems easier than holding on. But it's exactly at that point where the divine meets the human. God never promised ease. What He promised was purpose. He never said the road would be smooth, but He assured that every step would matter. In your moments of despair, something sacred was taking root. You may not have noticed it then, but your spirit was being strengthened. Your vision was being recalibrated. The things that used to distract you lost their grip. The voices that used to sway you faded into background noise. Struggle taught you silence. Silence taught you discernment. Discernment taught you trust, not in people, not in outcomes, but in God alone. What you have walked through wasn't light, it wasn't fair, but it was necessary. Because there are heights that only the broken can climb. There are places of authority that only the crushed can stand in with humility. God uses those who have been through fire because fire produces purity. You didn't lose yourself in the storm. You were transformed by it. Every delay, every closed door, every unanswered prayer was not a rejection. It was a redirection towards something higher. You were not being punished. You were being positioned to see what others overlook, positioned to carry wisdom not learned in books but earned in battle, positioned to stand when others sit, to believe when others doubt, to lead with compassion because you've known what it feels like to be forgotten. There is a depth in your soul now that wasn't there before, and that depth is what makes you ready, not for a return to what was, but for a rise into what's been waiting for you. The comeback is not just about being seen again. It's about stepping into a space where your scars speak louder than your success, where your pain becomes your platform, where your past doesn't disqualify you but validates the power within you. God allowed the struggle because He trusted what it would produce in you. He trusted your process because He already saw your promise. There is a weight in silence that many people never learn to carry. When heaven seems quiet, when prayers echo back unanswered, when the soul waits in the darkness without explanation, it is easy to interpret silence as abandonment. But divine silence is not the absence of God, it is His strategy. It is a sacred space intentionally created not to punish but to prepare. God's silence is never empty. It is full of meaning, full of movement, full of unseen orchestration. While it may feel like nothing is happening, everything necessary is being arranged behind the veil. In those silent seasons, the distractions fade. The noise of the world grows dim. The opinions of others lose their grip. And in that quiet space, you are left alone with your thoughts, your fears, your wounds, and your Creator. It is in silence that clarity is born. God does not shout over the chaos. He whispers into stillness. And for that whisper to be heard, everything else must go quiet. That is why silence is sacred. It invites intimacy. It pulls you away from external validation and pushes you toward internal revelation. When God becomes silent, it is often because He has already spoken and is waiting for you to listen more deeply. Sometimes we cry out for new direction when we haven't followed the last instruction. Other times, He simply withdraws the noise so we can grow. In the silence, trust is tested. You begin to ask, do I believe in God's goodness even when I cannot feel it? Do I trust His timing when mine is screaming in frustration? The silence does not change who He is. It reveals who you are becoming. Strategic positioning requires stillness. A master chess player does not rush. Every move is calculated, and sometimes the best move is to wait. In the kingdom of God, timing is everything, and before He shifts you publicly, He aligns you privately. While you are crying out for answers, God is repositioning relationships, realigning opportunities, closing doors that would have distracted you, and strengthening you in areas you didn't even realize were weak. He knows what's ahead, and His silence is a signal that something sacred is forming. He doesn't rush destiny, He perfects it. You may not have seen the fruit yet, but the root system has been growing deeper. You may not have received the breakthrough, but your foundation has been reinforced. The delay was not denial. The silence was not rejection. It was divine strategy. It was a hidden classroom where lessons were taught that will carry you through the next season of your life. Some things had to die in the silence. Your need for control, your obsession with outcomes, your dependence on external affirmation. In the absence of noise, the soul learns to hear God's voice with new ears. People may look at your life and wonder why things have taken so long. They may question why doors haven't opened or why your gifts seem hidden, but they don't know the depth of what God has been building in silence. They can't see the patience He's been cultivating, the faith He's been deepening, the vision He's been purifying. The silence wasn't passive, it was active. It was filled with unseen warfare, angelic assignments, inner healing, and divine alignments. When God goes silent, it is not because He is distant. It is because He is near in a different way. He is watching how you respond when you cannot trace His hand. He is measuring your faith when feelings fail. And in that sacred pause, He is preparing the platform, the people, and the provision. You were never forgotten. You were being fine-tuned. Heaven's silence was your spiritual cocoon, a hidden sanctuary where transformation takes place without applause, without spotlight, without noise. There is a version of you that existed before the world placed its labels on your identity, before the disappointments, before the comparisons, before the voices told you who you were not. There was an original design written by the hand of God. That design wasn't confused, it wasn't insecure, it wasn't lost. It was bold, intentional, whole. But somewhere along the way, life chipped at that original self. You began to believe you were only what others said, only what you achieved, only what you lost or gained. Yet the truth is, who you were created to be has never been erased. It has only been covered. And now, in the divine timing of your comeback, that identity is being restored, not by the world's standards, but by the hand of the divine. This restoration is not cosmetic. It's not about fixing your image, your status, or your surface-level confidence. It's deeper than that. God is not interested in creating a more polished version of your pain. He's calling forth the original you, the you that knows your worth not because of success, but because of sonship. The world teaches performance. God restores through presence. When He begins the process of restoration, it often feels like breakdown before breakthrough. He removes what no longer belongs, not to hurt you, but to unmask you. He dismantles false identities so that the truth can emerge without compromise. You were never created to fit into systems of fear or cycles of striving. That's why you've felt the tension all this time. There's been a battle between the image you've had to maintain and the spirit that longs to be free. Deep down, you've always known there's more to you. That knowing wasn't ego, it was memory. Your soul remembers what God spoke over you before time began. The restoration that's happening now isn't creating a new identity. It's uncovering the one that was always there. The one that's aligned with purpose, grounded in faith, and empowered by grace. God is restoring you with a different kind of strength, one that doesn't rely on titles, applause, or visibility. He is anchoring you in truth so that when the comeback happens, you will not be shaken. When people see you rise, they may think it's sudden, but you'll know it was sacred. You'll know that behind the scenes, God was stripping away every illusion that held you captive. He was removing every lie that kept you playing small. He was reminding you that you were chosen not because you were perfect, but because you were willing. Identity restoration is a spiritual unveiling. It's when your actions begin to match your anointing. When your confidence is no longer rooted in results, but in revelation. You don't need to chase approval when you've already been appointed. You don't need to strive for validation when you've been marked by the Creator Himself. This is the shift that God is bringing to your life, a shift from survival to stability, from confusion to clarity, from identity crisis to identity clarity. This restoration is personal. It cannot be mass-produced. It's not about imitating others. It's about becoming whole in who you are. That wholeness comes when you finally let go of the need to prove, to impress, to compete. It's the moment you realize you are not who the trauma tried to turn you into. You are not the mistakes you made or the opportunities you missed. You are not defined by how people treated you, what they called you, or who walked away. You are defined by what God breathed into you when He formed you in secret. Now that restoration is manifesting, things will begin to align differently. Doors that once rejected you will open not because you changed for them, but because you've returned to the truth of who you are. The way you carry yourself will shift, the way you speak, the way you walk into rooms, the way you make decisions. It will all carry the weight of someone who remembers where they came from and knows where they're going. You will no longer shrink to fit into places you've outgrown. You will no longer tolerate being misunderstood just to keep peace. Your identity is being restored by the one who authored it, and no force in this world can undo what God is now re-establishing within you. There are moments when it feels like everything you once held dear has slipped through your fingers, opportunities lost, relationships broken, dreams delayed or seemingly destroyed. It's tempting to believe that what was lost has somehow reduced your value or disqualified you from what could have been. But from a divine perspective, What you lost was never meant to define you. Your comeback is not about reclaiming the things that fell away. It's about stepping into the version of you that those things could never sustain in the first place. Loss, while painful, is often the clearing ground for something far greater to emerge. God does not measure you by what was taken from you. He measures you by what remains, and what remains even after the storm is more valuable than what was removed. The world may look at your scars and see weakness, but heaven sees evidence of survival, evidence of preparation. What felt like loss was actually divine subtraction, not to hurt you, but to protect you from building your identity around things that were never meant to last. God will never allow you to build your future on a foundation that cannot hold your destiny. That's why certain things had to collapse. That's why certain people had to leave. That's why certain dreams had to be delayed. It was never punishment, it was precision. When something falls away, there's a sacred moment of silence that follows. That silence can feel like loneliness, like failure, like punishment. But in that silence, God begins to speak in new ways. He whispers truth into the broken places. He begins to rewrite the story not with ink, but with experience. You realize that your value never came from that relationship, that job, that role, or that season. Your value came from the breath of God that was placed inside of you before you ever did a single thing. That value is eternal. It cannot be stolen. It cannot be diminished by loss. If anything, the loss revealed just how resilient you truly are. Every loss has the potential to become a seed, but it must be surrendered. You cannot cling to the past and expect to walk in the fullness of what is next. God is not trying to give you a replica of what you lost. He's preparing to bring something that far surpasses what you thought was the pinnacle. Your heartbreak did not cancel your assignment. Your delay did not negate your destiny. What you thought disqualified you was actually the very experience that qualified you in God's eyes, because it broke you open in the right way. It humbled you, it purified your motives, it deepened your compassion, and now you're no longer trying to prove yourself. You're simply ready to walk in truth. Your comeback is not about revenge, it's about redemption. It's not about showing the world what they missed. It's about showing the world what grace can restore. And the reason this comeback will be different is because you're no longer seeking to get back what you lost. You're stepping into what was always meant for you, with eyes wide open and a heart fully yielded. You've outgrown what used to define you. The old version of you needed titles and approval. The new version of you only needs alignment and peace. That shift is what makes this comeback unstoppable. The things you once cried over, you will now look back on with clarity. The tears that fell during those silent nights were never wasted. They watered the soil of the new you. They created the atmosphere for authenticity to emerge. They stripped away the illusion and left only the essential. And what is essential cannot be shaken. What is rooted in God's truth cannot be uprooted by life's disappointments. Your comeback was never about replacing what you lost. It was about realizing that what's ahead is built on who you've become, not on what you once had. There is no need to recreate the past when God is unveiling a future that was tailor-made for the real you, the refined you, the resurrected you that has been rising in silence all along. There comes a point in your journey when everything begins to shift, not because of external circumstances, but because heaven releases a signal in the spirit. That signal doesn't come with fireworks or loud announcements. It comes quietly, like a soft release from the divine that says, now, after all the waiting, the preparation, the pruning, and the silence, God releases the green light, not because you begged for it, not because you earned it, but because the internal work has reached divine alignment. It is not based on your emotions or your feelings of readiness. It is based on heaven's timing and your soul's positioning. You've been through a season of hidden work, where God has been working beneath the surface. While others saw stagnation, you were actually in acceleration, just not the kind that can be measured outwardly. Your character was deepening, your discernment was maturing, your dependency on the opinions of others was being severed. And now that these layers have been peeled back and your heart has become more aligned with the truth, the signal is being released. The green light is not just an invitation, it is a responsibility. It means you are now trusted with the weight of what's next. When heaven releases the green light, things begin to unfold not through striving, but through surrender. Doors begin to open that you didn't have to force. People show up in your life who speak to your destiny rather than your dysfunction. Resources align not because of manipulation, but because of obedience. This is not the season to hustle in fear, but to move in clarity. You no longer have to prove yourself to anyone. The proof is in your persistence. The proof is in the fruit of your endurance. The proof is in the fact that you are still here, still believing, still showing up when you had every reason to quit. The green light does not mean everything will be easy. It means the grace to move forward is now upon you. What was hard before becomes manageable. What was confusing before now begins to make sense. What felt distant now draws near. You begin to walk with a new level of authority, not the kind that shouts, but the kind that knows. It is quiet confidence birthed from knowing that God has sanctioned your steps. There is no longer a need to rush or compete. When heaven backs your movement, there is peace even in the pace. This is the moment where old patterns must stay behind. When God says go, it also means let go. Let go of the fear that held you back. Let go of the need for constant validation. Let go of waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect conditions. The green light means the conditions are right, not externally, but spiritually. It means what you carry is now mature enough to be released. Your voice, your vision, your gift, your presence, they are needed now. There are people waiting on the other side of your obedience. Lives that will be impacted, chains that will be broken, hope that will be restored simply because you chose to move when God said it was time. The greatest danger in this moment is to hesitate, to see the green light but stay parked because of fear or doubt. But hesitation can cost more than failure ever could. God is not looking for perfection. He is looking for willingness. You don't need to have it all figured out. You need to take the first step. And when you do, you'll notice something sacred. You are not moving alone. Heaven walks with those who walk in obedience. Divine favor follows divine timing. This is not about hype. It's about holy movement. It's about stepping into what has always been yours, but was waiting for the right version of you to rise. There is a weight that comes with the green light, but it is not a burden. It's a mantle. A mantle that fits now because the old you would have buckled under its weight. But this version of you has been through the fire, shaped in silence, and chosen not just to survive, but to lead. Not just to come back, but to rise differently. When heaven says move, it means heaven will also make a way.